Nate Mumford, Director of Sales Engineering, as always. And I'm joined today with the Barry Hill, VP of Customer Experience here at RCS. Time for another questions and answers during a time of remote workflows, which means get your questions in as always. And of course, if you have any questions, examples, issues, let us know. We are here to help. Hello, thank you, Di, for checking in. We are live. And of course, you can always email us live at rcsworks.com. You can direct message us, all of that good stuff. We're here, we're archiving this video, and today we're talking all about RCS support and all of that good stuff as well. So Barry, before we get right into it, I just want to talk about some housekeeping, which is of course one of my favorite RCS puns. Field technician services, don't forget we have the FTS portal. We've been on site. We're working with you for your Zeta installs and all of that good stuff. So there is, if you're comfortable with us on site, we have our masks, we have our gloves. If you want us to be, doing remote, we can do that as well. We're always looking for beta users as well. Zeta 5.20.1 is, I think it was days away at this point in time. So if you want to be a beta user, get the latest and greatest Zeta, you can do that. Just reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. And also, if you're working from home, we want your working from home photos as well. In return, we'll send you a nice little goodie bag with some RCS goodies in there too. So if you want to go ahead and message us, that's a direct message. Just send us a picture of your at-home setup as well as your name and address so we can send you some goodies. That'd be fantastic. We love that too. So Barry, good morning. How's it going?
Good morning, Nate. How are you, my friend? Glad to be here.
Delightful. So I don't know if you saw my Facebook teaser. We tried to do kind of behind the scenes, if you will, to tease our Facebook.
Is that the one where you ate the bug?
Yes, that's the one where I ate the bug.
I saw it.
Yeah. They're live, right? So listen, we come from radio background. I try to keep it, live as well. And it just so happens that, of course, last week here in the Northeast, so Barry's about, 20 minutes from me at home.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
Yep, we both work at White Plains, which is where the RCS headquarters is. And so essentially we got hit with a hurricane, which is unique for us because for the first time ever in Connecticut, we had the very first ever tornado hit on Tuesday. In fact,
it hit us in my little town. It hit us too.
Yeah. So first off, how are you doing? How is everything on your end?
I'm doing great. You can see that I'm here in my beautiful virtual veranda. So it's good.
Items may appear, bigger or smaller than they appear, something like that.
That's exactly. Thank you, Zoom, for your virtual background,
so
that people don't see my messy home office.
But yeah, so I had me personally, I had about 4 or 5 trees down. It's been a mess. I had no power for nearly a week, and it's been fun. So last Thursday's Facebook Live was unique because essentially I had to find not 1, not 2, not 3, but my 4th studio to broadcast live from. So luckily I got my power back here. If you hear any loud bangs or booms, just know that a 40-foot tree outside is being chopped up as we speak. So hopefully you don't hear anything, but that's what those noises are as well. So question for you, how, it's been a long time, obviously, talking about, when COVID hit, and obviously it's still going on. I thought today we would talk about RCS support, the great team over there, and just kind of some either behind the scenes or some things that we can do, the top 5 tips and tricks from our RCS support staff. And I guess the first question would be for you is how have you and your team adapted to COVID and working from home?
Well, we've adapted 100%. In fact, right now, pretty much 100% of the support department works from home. They work from their home office. We do have some people that are now trickling back into the office, but that's purely on a, if you want to kind of basis. It was really interesting, Nate, because, we didn't know how it was going to work. It's kind of like radio. You didn't really know, is this going to work? Is this going to happen? And then, to our surprise, it worked really well. And in fact, there really wasn't much of a disruption at all. We're a software company, so everybody's on computers anyway. Everybody's got, internet at home. All of our phone systems are all IP based, so we literally just unplugged our phones from the office and took them home and plugged them in, and they worked. Yeah. So from that aspect, if anything, I've learned that working at home, seems like I'm working more
Yeah.
I'm working later and starting earlier, and that's kind of true for everybody. So it's been a bit of a surprise. We already have a lot of our staff that were remote workers anyway, but this has really kicked it into everybody's a remote worker.
And of course, we do follow the sun, so we should probably make a note of that too, that we have people working all hours all the time for support as well. So
we absolutely do. Our very own Greg Cecil he recently relocated to Australia, and so he wakes up at about 3 p.m. our time, and he's around until the wee hours of the morning. And then we also have our foreign offices that also assist. That's our good friends there in Australia and also in Malmo, Sweden. And but honestly, we also have our own staff, our own domestic staff that are around during the overnight hours. So you really only get the those other offices if there's an unusual amount of calls at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
which there usually aren't. So.
And let's talk about that for a second. I know you and I were kind of brainstorming before the call here. One of the things that we'll just start right off here and talk about support and you as an RCS client and ways that you can reach out to us. Of course, you can always call us 914-259-4900. You can follow the prompts and all of that good stuff, whatever product you have for RCS. But also, we have, let's talk a little bit of the email aspect, the email support at rcsworks.com.
Well, absolutely. There's multiple ways to reach us. So traditionally, since the company began, we've had, the telephone support where you get a live body on the phone. With everybody working from home these days in the radio business, those call volumes have increased. There's a lot more people calling now. Hey, how do I do my voice tracking from home? Hey, how do I get connected to my G selector at the office? Those kinds of things. And so we do have some peak times that you may experience a bit of a wait, and that always seems to be right in there with radio, right? So it's 5 o'clock on Friday, and music day, and those kinds of things. And what people may not realize is that we also have email support, and it's not like emails go to my inbox or your inbox. We actually have a very sophisticated ticketing platform that's used by a lot of Fortune 500 companies that manages all that for us. So a lot of times, in fact, I'd say more than 50% of the time, you would probably get a faster response from email than from waiting on the phone.
Yeah, and what I like to kind of say is being on both sides, before I was at RCS, I was a program director. I built a bunch of radio stations here, and I remember sometimes it's just quicker. You have to jump into a meeting, you're going to have lunch, whatever it is. And sometimes it's just a quick question. I always had where if I tried it more than twice, it becomes almost a waste of my time to try to figure it out myself. It's better to go and ask the pros and get a better response. So what I like to do is, email support at rcsworks.com, and then from there, jump to my meeting, jump and go have lunch. And if it's just a quick little answer, by the time I come back, usually I have some kind of response in my inbox waiting for me. And if it's more complicated than that, then we can touch base on the phone and go from there.
Well, especially if it's not an urgent problem.
Yeah.
If it's just something you're curious about, I've had this weird thing that happens every once in a while with my A's. Why is that?
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. Then that's a perfect email kind of a question, because we can research it, we can get back to you, and it's not time sensitive. On the other hand, we've also had people who have emailed us that said, "Hey, I'm off the air," and in that situation, pick up the phone. and call us. So it's kind of funny that people, some folks have taken it to the extreme, and of course we want to respond to those off-air emergencies, immediately. So if you are off the air, you go through the telephones, you push the button that says "I'm off the air," you'll get somebody in a matter of seconds. So
let's talk about that. Let's dive right into we asked our support staff some kind of generic, frequently asked questions, things they wanted us to talk about. And so in kind of no real particular order here, I have a bunch of questions here that we can answer and discuss. And yes, this is my screen here. So in case you're wondering if it's stagnant, it's not. That's my Zeta there right there. Let's first talk about just the process of calling in and emailing, and how that works in regards to your RCS user ID and password. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, a lot of people don't realize they may already have one, or they need an RCS ID and an associated password, and that's so that you can log into our portal, you can log into the website, and from there you can see all your tickets. You can see if there's been a response to a ticket. Maybe it was something that got escalated, or we were having to do some research on, and it's been a couple of days, and you're wondering what the status is. Instead of calling us or emailing, "Hey, what's the story?" You can just log in using your password and your ID, and you can check out what the latest is on that particular issue. That's a huge one, and you can, if you should already have one. If you don't, you can go to the website and click the button "I need an ID," and it'll set you up.
Yep.
Same thing with if you've forgotten your password. That's all self-service now. There's no need to call for a password reset. You can go right to the website. I forgot my password, just like your bank works.
RCSworks.com. You go to sign in. There's a little forget password link. You can't miss it.
Yeah, with all the privacy concerns today, none of the support techs have your password. We don't know what your password is. So we can't tell you what your password is because we don't know either. It's all double secret encrypted. So it's the system will reset it for you and set you up with a new one if you need one.
Nice.
But definitely, you need an RCS ID, and that goes for things like data exchange. That goes for a lot of the different services that we use may need an RCS ID.
And
licensing.
Yeah, let's transition right into data exchanges, because that's a nice tool. I don't know if the clients know about this, but obviously data exchanges, think of this as kind of an email cloud backup of your database. And of course, we're talking about Selector and G Selector here. And so the idea with a data exchange is that you can send a database via email or a station database very quickly, very efficiently with your RCS credentials. And the beauty about one thing that people don't realize is that we actually have a data exchange recovery console. And what that means is when you send a data exchange, we'll use just Barry FM for right now. So when Barry FM,
a fine radio station.
Yeah, numbers have been in the tank past couple of years, but but essentially you would email yourself or whoever you want, and what we do is we look at it and say, well, Barry FM, those are the most recent call letters we have that are associated with Barry FM, and after 7 days, of course, the data exchange expires, and so rather than delete that, we do is we take the very latest data exchange that matches those call letters, and we just store it in case of emergencies. And I remember working back in support, one of my favorite calls I got was somebody called me up in a panic because their cat peed on their laptop and fried it. And you can't make it up. That's what happens. Just sure. And the first thing we did, we looked in, and it just so happened that it worked out perfectly. She did 7 days of logs, did a data exchange, hadn't touched her database in a couple days. We went in there, grabbed the data exchange recovery, restored it. No harm, no foul. It's all good. So definitely make a note of that too. I personally, when I was a PD, I like to always kind of send it on Friday afternoons as kind of my wrap up the week, so that I know that I have a data exchange in multiple locations. There's also now, of course, Jobs and G Selector. So you can schedule automatic backups as well if you wanted to. Those are local backups, and then you can send yourself a data exchange in addition to that as well.
So a little background on data exchange. It originally was conceived as a way to send your data to your consultant, right? People would have a consultant. The consultant would always say, "Send me a backup." Well, in the old days, you had to zip it up, or even worse, drop a floppy disk in the mail or some craziness like that. And so with the advent of the internet years ago, we came up with a way to data exchange. Like you said, it basically compresses the data, puts it in an email, sends it off to somebody. And it does go, by the way, that's also a double-blind situation. We don't have access to your database in data exchange. Even though it's our server, it's something that is also encrypted, and that goes for the same for anybody else. Nobody's going to get a copy of your database, for example, if you were to data exchange it. It is encrypted.
Yeah.
But what we learned was that you can data exchange, like you said, Nate. You can data exchange to yourself. So even if you're not sending it, people might say, "Well, why do I need to data exchange? I don't want to send it to anybody." Well, you can send it to yourself. So that way, you're in essence giving yourself a backup, like you said, a cloud backup of your own data. And we have used that so many times when people have had a problem, they've lost a computer, they let the smoke out, as we say in support. You never let the smoke out of a computer because you can't put it back in. But we've had that problem where we've said, do you have any backups? And they've sheepishly said, no, I didn't take any backups. I'm a bad person. And luckily, they had data exchanged at some time in the past, and we were able to get a backup from that. So just make it part of your, like you said, part of your weekly routine that you just send a data exchange to yourself. You don't even have to answer the email. Just send it out there, and it'll stay there until you need it. Hopefully you won't, but it'll be there if you do.
Yeah, and by the way, kudos to Donna. I have to give our support techs shout outs because these are from their their. So Donna was talking about
my team.
That was Donna. Rennell talking about data exchanges as well. And by the way, we're here questions and answers during a time of remote workflows, talking about RCS support and frequently asked questions. I'm here with Barry Hill, the VP of Customer Experience here. You got any comments or questions for Barry or myself? Any questions you want us to answer on any RCS products, you can comment below. Saying hi to Rob and Meg. Hello, thanks guys for checking in. And of course, if you have any kind of personal questions that you want to answer, a lot of times what I do is after these Facebook Lives, I go through our direct messages and I just kind of go back and forth and talking to, your situation and all that stuff. So if you do have anything you want to ask away. We'll be more than happy to help and answer these questions for you too. So Barry, I thought I would jump over here because I hate having a stagnant screen on a Facebook Live. I'm going to bring this over here. Two things. I'm going to give a shout out to Adrian, who helped set this up, and Greg as well. Just so you know, we're always here to help out with RCS support, no matter what the issue is. Obviously, if it's network and your local network IT, maybe we can't help so much on that. But in regards to RCS products, we're definitely here to help you out. And that includes some installs. And we want to make this a very easy process. So you'll notice that for our onboarding process for new users, the FTS portal, as well as any installations, there's a URL here called rcsworks.com/bookings. That's bookings with an S. And you can see here, you pick your product, you click on it, you put your name, your RCS credentials in here, and we can get you set up with an appointment. Of course, if for whatever reason, if there's an emergency, you need something quicker than that, you can always reach out to RCS support. We're here to help you for that as well. But if you're looking just to get some, some client installs, or just not too familiar, if there's a new build that's coming out that you want to install, definitely reach out to here, rcsworks.com/bookings. That's in there for you. And if you do have any issues and we need to access your machine, there's also a website here called rcsworks.com/remote. That's rcsworks.com/remote. This is essentially our portal we use to connect to your machine. We'll give you a code. You put that on your end. And we'll download a little kind of what we call a client-wise session. That's the software we use. And a lot of users, too, will have that kind of EXE kind of saved on their desktop. And so if they ever have an issue, they'll just kind of open that up and have that saved. So that's in there, too.
I'd like to mention that just real quickly. We used to use TeamViewer. We used to use VNC. And, I guess just a little under a year ago, we moved away from those. And, some people were a little, got their nose out of joint, like, how come you're not using TeamViewer anymore? It was so easy. And the reason that we went to ConnectWise is really for security, for both your security and our security. TeamViewer is made for teams, just like it says. It's right there in the name. It's made for collaboration of a team. It's not really made for a company to reach out to a client or vice versa. It expects everybody in that team to all be, working for the same common company. ConnectWise is, again, a secure platform. You have to let us in the door. We can't just arbitrarily remote into your system or into your computer without you knowing or without your permission. And that's a very, very, in today's world with the the California Consumer Protection Act and the European their whole act as well, that it's something that we have to adhere to, and we have to be very conscious of that we're not exposing or somehow creating a privacy issue. So that's why you have to put in that code. You have to literally open the door and let us in, and then it works as it did before, where we can investigate, remote control your machine, et cetera. But once that session is closed, it's closed. We can't just jump back in 2 days later without your permission.
And also, I want to reinforce that, Barry. We were talking about the California and the European Privacy Acts. It's not just even something that we want to follow and abide by, but we want to respect and honor those. And so we've taken a policy here at RCS, because we're an international company. We have offices in Europe and Australia and everywhere. We try to we want to respect all of that, but we also want to do it for, let's say for like us in New York, for example, that don't have necessarily the privacy laws that California has. And so that's something we want to respect across the board, and we do. That's what Barry was talking about, the passwords. We can't see your passwords. We need to ask permission to get on your machine, stuff like that. So just know, it's not just we have to follow it. We want to also honor and respect it. And so we carry it across the entire company. We carry kind of the European model because that's the more stricter of the two.
It's just the right thing to do, honestly.
So yeah, we talked about the rcsworks.com/remote. We talked about the bookings. That's in there with Adrian. Let's get some good stuff. Maya in support brought up a very good point. Talking about audio issues. And they wanted to talk about essentially, what you can do if you have an issue in regards to I'm off the air or just I'm having, again, I said audio issues. And I asked the question to the team to pretty much say, okay, well, what is something that I could bring up in this Facebook Live that would help you identify the issue? Because a lot of times in support, it's very hard when you get somebody who calls in and they're like, hey, I don't hear audio. That's a very broad. Go ahead.
It's broken. Fix it.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I'm trying to hopefully convey here too is identify certain things. So I asked, these come in no particular order from Maya, Renell, Jason as well in support, and Chase too. They said ask certain things, ask yourself certain questions like what type of audio technology are you using? What changed in the environment? What type of sound issue is it? What's happening to the audio? Is it stuttering? Very technical terms. Is it garble? Is it gooble? Are you having an issue on just one machine or is it on multiple machines?
One common one that is we often have to differentiate between, is it a dropout or is it a pause? Meaning, does the audio and then continue where it left off, or is there a piece missing? Because that's a big difference between, on what could be the initial cause. Did the actual piece get lost, or did it just stop and then restart? So we need to know those kinds of things.
And of course, Jen was saying too, it'd be really great if, you can identify specifics. So I kind of created some things on here. We were talking about in the Zeta environment, one of the things that's great about Zeta is that you can really identify sometimes the error that's happening in regards to smaller, issues. So you can see here, I have some red X's over here on this I cannot play sweeper and these two elements here. I'm using my RCS Hot AC. This is my station. I just have it paused for just audio purposes. And you can see, obviously, I dragged and dropped Aerosmith Dream On for my RCS Hot AC station, and I have an X. And the question becomes okay, why do I have that X? And throughout Zeta, you can actually hover over this and you'll see it's not active for the current station. So if I double click on Aerosmith, you'll see that I have classic rock. It's not active for my RCS Hot AC, thus it cannot play. On the flip side, go ahead.
It's a protection method to make sure that you don't accidentally put the country song on the rock station.
Yeah. And then from there, I have this I cannot play sweeper, right? If you hover over it, it will tell you end date in the past. Right? So if I double click on this I cannot play sweeper, you'll see that it's active for everybody. Now I put an hour restriction grid just to double down on that, but also I have here on the end date, I have it yesterday as the end date. And by the way, if I hover over here, end date in the past, there are ways to identify for you as a user in Zeta to say, heads up, this might be a problem. You're going to have an audio playback issue with this particular element. And the cool thing about Zeta, this carries across to all modules as well. So again, this I cannot play sweeper, if you notice, end date in the past, I'm on RCS Hot AC, that's my hotkey bank. I can't play this. I'm clicking right now. This element will not play no matter what because the I cannot play sweeper has an end date of yesterday and thus cannot play on RCS Hot AC. And don't forget too, They're station specific. So you can see here RCS Hot AC. There's my little timestamp to show me the end date. I'm on the station specific tab. There's my end date right there. But I also have end dates default as well. Default is, of course, what everybody sees. And there's an end date on there too if I wanted to add an end date that's not station specific, but default across the board. That's in there too.
Yeah, a lot of people just assume that the red X means the audio is missing, which it can, but it can also mean a lot more than that. So, and if you're really geeky, you can go to the log screen that you've got there, and you can actually add a column. You can actually add the error code or the editing code column right to the log itself. So you don't even have to do the hover over. You can see it right there in the log if you wanted to. So.
Yeah, and I don't have any error codes because I have no errors. But yeah, I was like, where'd the error code go?
There you go. You mentioned something also, Nate, that's very important, and that is the environment of the system. It's kind of a running joke in tech support that we will ask a client, "Has anything changed on your computer recently?" And they'll say, "Oh no." And then 30 minutes later, we'll be talking, and they'll say, "Well, when I ran those Windows updates yesterday," and we go, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. That's a very important thing to know."
Yes.
People tend to forget that, oh, yeah, I did update some software, or, oh, yeah, I did run Windows updates. Those are big, big clues. There was a recent Windows 10 update, what's known as Build 2004. It just came down in Windows Update. Yeah. And it turns out that Windows Update juggled around audio sources in the computer, unbeknownst to people. It would reorder often the audio so that what used to be the primary and you have your audio devices set in order, it will kind of juggle them around. Who knows why? But the result would be suddenly audio's not working anymore, and we just have to go in and just reset those. But that's a very important clue. Oh yeah, I ran Windows updates yesterday, which, and we're all for keeping your computer, up to date with security updates and all that. But you should also look at what you're installing with Windows Update. And if it is something like a major upgrade to the operating system, hold off, maybe give us a call and ask, should I do this? Before just clicking, install everything.
Yeah. A lot of stuff with .NET Framework is in there too. And of course, don't forget there are services that run in the background for both Zeta and G-Selector. So a lot of times that comes into play as well. Windows is notorious when they run Windows updates too. When you reboot, sometimes even their own Windows services don't start in a particular order, and it kind of throws a little out of whack. And sometimes you just go in there, just restart some services, and we're good to go. I apologize for delay on the comments. I noticed we were kind of quiet here. And I went on my phone here, and so I popped some of them up here. So, Dave Benson, the greatest engineering question of all time. Is it plugged in? Thank you, Dave.
There you go. Is it turned on?
Yeah. Dave also mentioned, too, Microsoft training taught me reboot fixed 90% of the problems. As always, we have the reboots in there, too.
Here's another funny one, Joe, from long ago. I started in tech support here at RCS. I've been with the company over 20 years, and I started as just a rookie answering the phones. And one of the first things they taught us was the 3 R's of RCS tech support. You know what they are, Nate?
What's number one? Reboot, I'm assuming.
Nate, run everything.
Okay, select your housekeeping.
Reboot, reinstall. Now, obviously, we don't go through that today with something like Zeta or G-Selector. We don't reinstall the software. That's from the old Selector days. But there is something to be said for rebooting, like the gentleman said. It cleans out the cobwebs. It starts everything fresh. And if the machine hasn't been rebooted in weeks and weeks and weeks, it's good to do that occasionally. Yeah. Again, just to get us fresh slate.
Absolutely. And by the way, thanks to Mary for checking in. Allison from support is checking in as well. We love it.
Allie.
And so the biggest thing too is we were talking about identifying certain things. And we were talking about, and Jason made the point, what's really helpful is identifying, it's really helpful to identify exact time elements and along those lines. So, for example, I'm using the example of here the Red X and Aerosmith Dream On and the I Cannot Play sweeper. Let's say there's something more that's going on here, right? Let's just say there might have been a GPI that didn't fire or something along those lines. The idea is when you want to call in, you want to identify for your support tech what's going on. So, for example, I would call in, and if I don't know what's going on here, I would say at 12 o'clock, I had a song, Aerosmith Dream On, and it did not play, and I'd want to know why. So what we would do is go in there, and on 8:13 at 12 o'clock, we would go in, either the debug or just looking at your log screen here, as Barry was saying, the error code, there's a lot of little troubleshooting tips in here. I could jump in here as a tech and say, okay, well, 8:13, 12 o'clock, here's 12, here's Dream On, what's going on? And I can identify this particular issue. I can identify it in the debug. So, for example, if something didn't fire, if you went off the air, if it's in, and again, identifying where it is in Zeta. So my sequencer had dead air at 9:36, and we don't have to be like 9:36 and 13 seconds, but give us a rough timeline so we can hopefully isolate that particular element. It's going to really just speed up the process. That's the biggest thing there too. And don't forget that there. Go ahead, Barry.
No, I was just going to say the more details, the better. You wouldn't go to your doctor and say, "I'm in pain." Why? You would say, my arm hurts, and then the doctor will say, "Well, what makes it hurt?" "Well, it hurts when I do this." It's the same kind of a thing. We need to know what you were doing at the time that caused, that maybe might have an impact on what was happening, instead of just saying we had glitching last night. That is not helpful. So we need to know, like you said, what was the song? When did it happen? Those are the kind of details that are critical to chasing down a problem.
And of course, we have one of the calls I talk about all the time. We were talking about essentially a user wanted to know how a music log changed. And of course, with G Selector and Zeta, we have 100% live integration. So if you make a change on one, it changes on the other. And we tried to have, we want to identify certain users, right? So we want to have the Nate user, the Barry user. And what happened in this particular example is he called in and he was like, the hour of music changed on Friday at 3 p.m. What happened there? And so we ran reports. You can see something like this. So you can see that, we break this down in Zeta very, very detailed. This is a report. This is different than the debug that we have behind the scenes. And like, for example, you can see like I added this asset here just before this call, and I made a change to the asset I Cannot Play. It was an asset metadata card change on the station RCS hot AC, on the computers at a demo, on the username supervisor. Very detailed information here. And what happened was they had the user everyone. And so I identified in that particular circumstance the user everyone on the machine production at Tuesday at 3 o'clock, made a change to this log and added all these elements, removed all these elements. And of course, the question became, well, who's everyone? Who is everyone? I was like, well, that's what you used to sign in, so it was everyone. Now, it ended up being just a kind of part-timer doing their show, but that's some things we're identifying, certain issues. That's really helpful.
Well, sure, yeah. You just like you wouldn't have, one email address for your entire radio station. You'd have different email addresses for every person, right?
Yeah.
It's the same kind of a thing. You want to log in with different IDs just for this reason. And if for the engineers and the IT guys that are watching, you should familiarize yourself with this screen, this report screen. This is something you should know intimately. And the reason is because this is an activity report. Every click that happens on every Zeta computer in your building is logged. Everything from somebody clicked a hotkey to somebody changed a song to, you name it, it's in there. And through this interface that Nate's got up on the screen, you can filter that down to find out exactly on which computer, at what time, and what user, on what station. I mean, you can narrow it right down. And this is very much a forensic, crime scene kind of thing. And this was put in, obviously for the users to use, but it's also very valuable for us because oftentimes someone will call and say, that dang computer did something all by itself. and Zeta deleted my show. And we go, well, let's go see. And then we find out, no, it was somebody in this room did it at this time on this, and we can actually narrow it down. And that's very valuable for you engineers and IT guys.
Which is why identifying the issue, identifying some supporting, not documentation, but identifying some, for example, we're talking about that, how is the audio? Is it stuttering? Is it a garble? Is it a pause? Is it a dropout? And then talking about the exact times. Because if you're like, it happened between 10 and 11, well, look, now we have this report and we can really narrow down that search, opposed to at some point in time yesterday, this happened to some type of asset, right? We can search here too. Like I can go in here and search by I cannot play to the description of the changes, and I can also isolate that element too. So if you want to know why on Barry FM, Aerosmith did not play, we can go and look at search by Aerosmith, search by the computer and usernames, and identify what happened there as well. Getting back to the go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, speaking of common questions, a lot of times an engineer will call, and it's about maybe a satellite show or some kind of closure that we didn't that they allege we didn't get, or how come we didn't cut away like we were supposed to. This log combined with the GPIO log, we can really narrow down to, we got a closure and we didn't do the right thing, or we never got the closure at all, which happens more frequently than you would think from some of the providers, where sometimes they just forget and skip a closure.
Absolutely. Want to give a shout out, James. I'll get to your question in a couple seconds. James, thank you for checking in. Ashley for checking in. Brendan, we'll get to your question as well just next. Megan was joking that her and Donna always joked, did it ever work in the first place? Sometimes that's an important question to ask. Was it working before and then it stopped? Again, going back to that, what changed in your environment? Because a lot of times we get these calls and it's like, hey, it's broken, and it turns out it was never working in the first place, which brings us to the bigger issue at hand. Couple questions here, Barry. Of course, get your questions in. You can comment or direct message us. James was asking, is it possible to upload multiple songs in Zeta to Go? Technically, it's a 1-to-1 right now in Zeta to Go via the metadata cart. Now, you can set up some unique circumstances. So, for example, when COVID hit, I was talking to a production director from a cluster that had 5 stations, and we were talking about adding commercials and bulk and all of that good stuff. If you have a VPN connected to, in theory, your local Zeta, right? Because you need Zeta to Go, you need a VPN. Most likely, you'll have access to a file path on that machine as well. So what I would do in that circumstance, James, I'm going to close this, go to my configuration system. I'm going to go to my auto load section. And so what I would do on my end, if this was me, is I would have a folder here, right? An auto import folder. So it's based on location. Remember, there's some previous videos of this in our archives. But the idea is that we create a location. Zeta then can identify the location and perform multiple executable workflows. So in this example here, I'm going to jump to locations, again, under configuration and system. I have this auto import folder, right? Zeta import sound effects. That's where I made the generic folder. That could be, of course, a public drive, like a P drive on your network, so to speak. And if you have access, or your Dropbox. And then from there, when I have the auto load, I can then say, of course, whenever I have an auto in here, what do I want to do? I want to put it in the sound effects folder, or again, song spot link. What do I want to do? Do I want to match on anything? Do I want to add it? Do I want to override the audio? And then, of course, down here, am I activating it? Am I assigning it a certain category? And there's some advanced features here on how often it polls. So can you add multiple elements in Zeta to Go? You can do one at a time. However, you can set up an auto load folder based on a FTP or a public drive that you have access to with your VPN to essentially drag and drop audio to that location, which then Zeta will add every element in the system, and then they'll give you access to Zeta to Go to adjust the metadata and any kind of audio analysis that you want to perform on there.
That's right, and you can have an unlimited number of within reason, an unlimited number of those auto load folders. So you can have, like you've got 3, but you could have 3 for every jock. Bob's bits and somebody else's music and somebody else's public affairs show, so that depending on which folder it goes into, Zeta routes that to a different place, puts it in a different area in the program.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's just looking at a folder. It's just watching a location, and that location can be a Dropbox folder. So you don't even, in that case, you wouldn't even need VPN. If you've got a Dropbox sync going on with your organization, then at your home computer, you can drop something into the Dropbox folder. Dropbox is going to replicate that back to the station. Zeta's going to see it, pick it up, and ingest it.
Brandon, I'm going to get to your Zeta to go question. I'll comment in a little bit. I got to double check that. But your other question for Brendan, can you enforce, this might be one for you, Barry. Can you enforce user passwords in Zeta? Our guys hate passwords, so would love to force them to use passwords in there. So if I'm not mistaken, Barry, obviously there's Windows security in there too. So if you wanted to use kind of a Windows domain or something like that, you can use those Windows login credentials for Zeta. That's one option. The other would be it reminded me, I'm just working this through my head, Barry. I could go to the configuration, go to the users and the accounts, and I could isolate that field. So I would give them a password, and then I would lock down that window for them to be able to change that password, right? That's probably...
Yep, exactly. That would prevent them from going in and removing their own password so they don't have one. But if a password exists, they have to use it. So that's the way to make sure that they have to use a password.
Yeah. So to answer that question, Brandon, so you can see here, I'm under configuration. This is kind of the user rights, right? The organization roles, accounts, and talents grids. They kind of work on a hierarchy here. What I would do is I would create a role for probably jocks or talent or something along those lines. I would then, under the admin rights, probably hide the config window from them so they couldn't see it or couldn't open some of the config options. At that point in time, I would then jump to the account section here. I would give them their own username and passwords. Here's where we set that Windows user versus the Zeta user, by the way. I would say just be careful on that's not one of those switches you make just like on a whim. You want to make sure you have some things organized there. And then I would just give them a Zeta username and password, save it, and because they can't go to the config, I'm pretty confident they can't change it after that, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. And a lot of people ask what role is too. Role is just an easy way to group users together in a common thing. Part-timers, full-timers, that would be a common one. Engineering. Just levels of access. So you don't have to go in when you get a new employee, you get a new jock on staff. You don't have to go through here and click every box from memory and try and remember what it is. You can just give them that role, and they will automatically get all of those security profiles, just like you do in Windows. Yeah.
Cool. Brendan said, cool, thanks. Derek, thank you for checking in. Also, our friends over at CHBN for always checking in. We'd love to see you guys there. They were asking if does Zeta have a logout for user after X number of minutes of inactivity? And we'll take this for Zeta and Zeta to go. If I'm not mistaken, Barry, I don't think there's an auto log out for the UI because by default we want to see Zeta. We want it running in the background. Is there a config change in the background? Do you remember?
There's not something in Zeta itself to log someone out. In that situation, what we would generally advise is using the Windows screensaver. Using the Windows screensaver with the checkbox that says you have to enter the password to get back in. So basically, it's locked. It's not logged out. It's locked until somebody gets back into the program. In that scenario, with that particular question, what we would want to know is what are you trying to accomplish? Why? Why do you want it to automatically log out? It could be that you're trying to fix a situation that there's a different way or a better way. So that'd be a good call to support to say, I'm experiencing this with my staff. Is there a way to log out automatically, or is there a better way to keep them from doing whatever it is you don't want them to do?
And there's an example we give. There's one of our big clients has a workflow in which when they leave for the day, I have an example here of these two hotkeys, the orange and the green hotkey. They are told to essentially, when they leave for the day, they fire this orange hotkey. that takes them, no matter what mode they're in, puts them in auto mode. It also disables the board at night. You've heard me say this a couple times in these videos. And they close Zeta, right? Because the Zeta UI is allowed to close. We are not going to get taken off the air. What happens there is that if I am a person who's not allowed to be in there at that time, I can essentially look at the screen. All I see is windows. That's all I see. And I can't do anything with the board. I can't press any buttons. And when the morning show comes in, they are told to essentially open up Zeta. They have their own username and login. That gives them their default layout, as you can see here. And the first thing they do is to fire the green hotkey to essentially take them from auto, put it in live assist. And then in addition to that, they could enable the board, and then they have their profile and they're back ready to go. So Barry's absolutely right. I think the bigger question there, guys, is why would you want to have them automatically log out? And if you do, it'd be
there may be a perfectly legitimate reason. We just need to know. We just often want to understand the use case. That's a common support way of putting it. It's like, well, what is the use case? What is their intent, and what are they trying to accomplish? And then let's take a step back and see if there's a way to skin that cat instead of doing it ham-fistedly, which that may or may not be. And a lot of people that's a great thing you brought up, is those are macros on your hotkeys. And a lot of people don't realize that a hotkey can be a non-audio macro event. And a macro is simply a list of things to do. A macro can be change the switcher, turn this relay on, or it can be play a hotkey or start a sequencer. It can be just about anything that Zeta can do can be macroed. It can be put into the macro. And then when you click the button, it executes all those things at once. And because this macro is on a hotkey, that means that hotkey can also be used with Zeta to go. So in the field, even though you're not in the building, you could have a hotkey that says, turn on the this, turn on the that, pot me up and make me live, or whatever you need it to do. One of the common examples I always used to use with macros on a hotkey is maybe you're a smaller station and you carry the college football game on Saturday nights, and there's a list of things that need to be done to get that on the air, right? We need to make a routing change. We need to maybe change the Wheatstone console. We need to turn on the channel, and instead of having your jock, go through the checklist of the 5 things, you could have all of those on a button that says "Go to Stadium."
Yeah,
and you click,
boom, 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 boom,
and
boom,
it just and then another one that says "Game's over," and it does them in reverse. So I mean, there's a lot of easy ways to automate things like that in Zeta.
And of course, that's config macros right here, and on top of that, there's also asynchronous and also all at once. So you have a choice of how you want that macro to sound there. I think I have some test macros in here.
And it's just a list of things. Like it's kind of like in the old school days, you had a batch file. It's kind of like that. Obviously more sophisticated, but it's just a list of things, and it goes down the list.
Yeah. So you can see here, that's that. When you first create the macro, there's where you can specify, is it all at once, which is the default, or do you want to have it in a row? That's also an option as well for you in there too. So that's the macros in there.
It's almost to the point of being its own little scripting language, because you can even have macros call other macros, and you can get. We've had some clients get really inventive with the things they can do with macros.
Yeah. And we love that. We love you to be inventive. That's great. That's the purpose of it. And then of course, the question we had from CHBN was log out due to inactivity. Don't forget, in Zeta to go, there's an option in the very top left where you can go in and see the active sessions. I believe it's under settings, active sessions, and then you can essentially boot out people who have not done anything or whatever it is. So there's a manual push in Zeta to go. So hopefully that answers your question, guys. Let me know if that does not. Also,
something that I might I'll speak to the Zeta team, because a lot of times, for example, in the you can also put a macro in the log, right? So you can say at midnight I want to automatically change to automation mode, do these things, because nobody's we're going to turn the lights off, right? Everybody's going home. There is the potential that we could say that we could have a macro event that would be log out. And that's something, I don't believe we have that today, but that's something that we could put on the enhancement list and look at.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for Ash and Barry for checking in. And CHBN, they were clarifying. So they had... I got you. So for them, they were saying how they have certain users that are allowed to add music to the database, and they need to be checked before the broadcast. But if an admin, let's say, logs in, checks it, and then leaves the office machine logged in, other users would have access to that, essentially that profile.
So it's a security concern.
Is there remind me, is there a macro for logging out in here? I'm trying to think of...
Not to my knowledge. That's why they're always adding things right and left in Zeta. So
no, there's Zeta log out right here.
Oh,
there's
well,
a
there
Zeta
you go.
log out.
See?
So
that's something else I should mention is that Zeta is constantly being enhanced and developed. Our development staff is putting in new bells and whistles all the time. I run support, but I don't do support on a daily basis. So sometimes I don't know everything that we've added, and there are new things that are constantly being added.
And of course,
read those release notes.
I was going to try to subtly bring in beta users, and then I forgot I was going to do a slide like, hey, cough, cough, beta users. But then I can't remember what I was going to do. But yeah, if you want to be a beta.
I haven't even looked, but I guarantee you that right now in our support chat, all the support people are mocking me for not knowing that.
Yes.
Guarantee you.
There's been a couple in here so far. So yes, right. They're having a watch party back in on our Teams chat.
Yeah, they always love it when the boss is on because then they can make fun of all the things I got wrong.
Here you go, Jason. Thank you, Jason, for chiming in. He was there's an auto logout in configuration system general under the miscellaneous section in the top right. Automatic logout users after X minutes. So there you go. There's a macro here, but here's saying config system general automatic logout users after X minutes. There you go, CHBN.
Thing of beauty.
I love when you guys ask these great questions. I feel like they're like that sweet spot of my Facebook Live where they keep chiming in with these questions and I keep having answers, and it's great. I love it. Thank you, Jason. All right, so Barry, I try to tell you 12 o'clock is usually my cutoff for both us and for you. So if you want to get your questions in, we're going to wrap up and get the last minute comments and questions in. As always, you can email us live at rcsworks.com. You can direct message us as well. As I was saying earlier, a lot of times I spend a lot of my Thursdays after the session going in, and I have a slew of direct messages from questions and comments and all that good stuff. So if you want to chat after the Facebook Live, or if you're a different time zone and you watch this later on, you want to have questions, just direct message us. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions for you there. I'm usually pretty good at sending screenshots and all of that good stuff too. So
I'd also like to mention just that my email is very simple. I've got a legacy email. It's just Barry at RCSworks.com, Barry. And if you ever feel that support is not up to our standard, you're not getting progress on a particular issue, any reason, you can write to me directly, and I will make sure that you get taken care of, and we get to the bottom of whatever it may be. My door's open both for the staff and for customers as well. So don't feel like you're pulling a Karen and jumping to the manager. That's perfectly fine. That's fine. I'll make sure. Like I said, I've been in tech support since I started at the company, and it's near and dear to my heart, and I want to make sure that everybody gets taken care of to the 100%.
Yeah, that's Barry, Barry at rcsworks.com. So just to recap here, Barry, the VP of Customer Experience, if you're just logging in right now. I'm going to get last minutes for questions and comments. If you want to comment below, we'll get to those questions here. As I said beforehand, otherwise we'll have direct messaging as well. It's just a review here. We're talking about kind of, just a grab bag of support questions. And as always, thank you to our fantastic support team. They're truly, we joke, they're world-class across the board. So just some tips there. If you have an off-air emergency, yes, probably call in the off-air line. You'll get immediately right to us. If it's not an off-air emergency, And let's say it's just a question like you're talking about G Selector and you have a curious about a certain function or something. I always personally, when I was a PD, I like to kind of email, go do a meeting or go, do whatever it is and come back an hour later. And usually there's a response there waiting for me. If it's a bigger issue, we can touch base and we can call you and all that good stuff. If you have any kind of installations, don't forget we have the two sites here. It's rcsworks.com/bookings, as well as we have the remote access rcsworks.com/remote. That's in here as well. And then from there, we were talking about, we didn't talk about selectorlicense.com, Barry. That was the little subtle tip of the day. If you are a station that has no access to the internet and you're offline and you need a selector license, there is actually a hidden URL. It's selectorlicense.com. That's just, selectorlicense.com, all one word. That will bring you to your RCS portal. You can log into your RCS credentials, and that will give you a manual license in there as well, too. So that's a very important note. Selectorlicense.com. That's
right.
a little... Go ahead.
Sure, and that's because a lot of stations don't have their audio network or their production network on the internet, and so the internet licensing function won't work. And in the past, you've always had to call us and do the number juggle, as we say. Give us the seed code, and we go back and forth. This is a way for you to do it. You can have your phone right there in the rack room, and you can give yourself that seed code license.
Yep. And Brendan, I will direct message you about that hotkey question, just so you know. And then we're talking about data exchanges and the fact that after 7 days, if you have a set of call letters, we're going to match up on essentially your most recent data exchange, and we'll save a copy in our data exchange recovery console. So if you're looking for backups, we were talking about earlier about how to develop workflows to make sure you can email yourself the database. Very helpful there. Talking about audio issues, the biggest thing for audio issues is really identifying what changed, what's the environment, what is going on, and really identifying the specifics of a relative time range, as well as the elements as well, so we can help identify you and really just kind of get you back on the air as soon as possible. That's the biggest thing there too. Nope, you're all good, Brendan. Don't worry about that.
Yep, the more details, the better.
And thank you, V, for she wrote out the selectorlicense.com on the bottom. So thank you, V. And yeah, so any last minute things you want to mention, Barry? We got 2 minutes left here. I am on point today, by the way. This is fantastic.
Nope. I think we covered just about everything. And you did mention early on that our field tech services, our installers, are traveling. And of course, they're all masked up and with their gallon of hand sanitizer on their hip. So if, in fact, one of our guys, John Kelsey, one of our longest tenured installers, is even in Hawaii doing a Zeta install as we speak. Now, don't get too jealous because of the COVID laws in Hawaii. He's only allowed to go from his hotel room to the station and back. So he can't go to the beach, unfortunately.
Sun out there?
It's like welcome to paradise. Stay in your room.
Yeah.
But we are traveling, so if there is a need for new equipment or whatnot, make sure that you speak with our FTS department.
Yeah. And Dave, I'll answer your question too. I'll direct message you. And a shout out to if anybody in support that I didn't mention, either Stan or Sarah on the G Selector team. I just want to make sure I give you guys all shout outs here before I forget. Am I forgetting anybody? I had the Jen, Barry. Am I forgetting anybody?
The best support department ever made. I can't say enough about the team. They are all very smart and very passionate people who are, live to help you out.
So anything we do to help out, you let us know. As I said, we're here to help out as well. It's 11:59:49. This is perfect timing. Barry, thank you so much for taking the hour to hang out with us. As always, these videos are archived, rcsworks.com, as well as there's going to be a video section that's coming up very soon. And there's also going to be, of course, on Facebook page, all of our videos are broken down by products for you as well to answer that too. So with that, I will sign off, and we'll see you next Thursday. I got some really cool stuff coming up, including a site rep versus Zcast. I might do a recap of post-COVID, but a recap of COVID remote workflows with Zeta to Go, Zeta and Zeta Cloud, and Selector to Go and G Selector. So expect that down the pipeline. I'll try to get some events and stuff for everybody to so we're a little more organized there too. So thank you so much for tuning in. Barry, thank you again. We'll see everybody next Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Questions and answers during a time of remote workflows. Be safe, be healthy, wear your mask, wash your hands, all that good stuff. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.